The reason why I wanted to jump on here is not necessarily about that because, hey, what else is new on Earth where everybody seems to want to enjoy a certain kind of life, but for whatever reason, we're living an entirely different kind of life, right? It would just make you wonder with all these people running around here dressed up in all these weird ass clothes and all this paint on their face and all this disconnection and make you wonder what the hell is going on.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into a YouTube video today. It's called Awaking Life IP3 Masters of the Prism.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's from the channel Understanding.
Interesting.
This speaker really goes deep into some pretty complex concepts, like the nature of reality, human behavior, and even breaking free from patterns that might be holding us back.
Yeah, that sounds really fascinating. It's definitely a topic that's always intrigued me.
It's dense stuff, but I think it's definitely worth exploring.
Absolutely. It's important to challenge our assumptions and look at things from different perspectives.
Right from the start, the speaker jumps into this idea that the world we experience is actually an illusion.
Oh, wow.
A projection of our minds.
Like we're living in a dream or something.
Kinda, yeah. Almost like stepping through the looking glass in Alice in Wonderland,
I see. So it's like we're perceiving a distorted version of reality.
Exactly.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
To explain it, the speaker uses this analogy of a projector.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, they're suggesting that our minds are kind of like projectors, casting this image of reality onto, the screen of our perception.
So we're not actually seeing reality directly. We're seeing a projection of it.
Right, and that's where the idea of the illusion comes in. We become so absorbed in this projected reality that we mistake it for something genuine.
So it's like we're watching a movie and forgetting that it's not real life.
Exactly, and to further illustrate this point, they use the example of light.
Oh, interesting. How does light play into this?
Well, they argue that bounced light loses its power.
Yeah.
Like when light bounces off a surface, it becomes dimmer.
I see.
So they're suggesting that this projected world, this illusion, can never hold the same strength, the same vibrancy as the original source.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it really makes you question what is that original source and what would it be like to experience it directly?
Exactly. If what we're seeing is just a dimmed reflection, what does that say about our true potential?
Right. It's like, if we're only seeing a fraction of reality, what are we missing out on?
And how can we tap into that fuller, more vibrant reality?
Those are some big questions.
Definitely. And that's what makes this video so compelling.
Now, the speaker doesn't just talk about the illusion of reality. They also delve into human behavior.
Okay, so how do they connect those two ideas?
Well, they start by showing footage of snow monkeys in Japan.
Snow monkeys?
Yeah, and they point out how these monkeys naturally form hierarchies, even without human intervention.
So they're suggesting that hierarchy is not just a human construct, that it might be something more primal.
Exactly, like an instinct that's ingrained in us from our evolutionary past.
That's interesting because we often think of hierarchy as a product of human society and culture,
But the speaker seems to be suggesting that it might go deeper than that it might be something we've inherited from our animal ancestors.
Which raises the question, if we're living in this projected reality, this illusion, are we essentially just playing out these ancient survival strategies within that illusion?
Ooh, I like that. Are we missing a bigger picture?
Potentially, yeah.
Because if we're so focused on climbing the ladder, so to speak, within this projected reality, maybe we're not seeing the forest for the trees.
We might be so caught up in the game that we forget that it's just a game.
And that leads the speaker to delve into some of the darker aspects of human behavior, specifically racism and bigotry.
So how do they tie that into the idea of hierarchy?
Well, they argue that these issues stem from this inherent tendency towards division and what they call selectivism.
Selectivism.
Yeah, it's like this need to define ourselves as separate and superior to others.
Like we need to create these categories and labels to feel a sense of belonging and identity.
Right, but the speaker makes a really bold statement here.
What's that?
They argue that these divisions, these labels and categories, actually weaken us.
Weaken us? How so?
They're saying that by clinging to these arbitrary categories, we create a fragmented world, a world of us versus them.
And that prevents us from seeing the underlying unity that connects us all.
Exactly. And they believe that this fragmentation limits our ability to perceive, the true nature of reality.
It's like we're building walls instead of bridges.
Exactly, and those walls keep us trapped in this illusion of separation.
Which ultimately prevents us from reaching our full potential.
So we've got this illusion of reality, this primal instinct for hierarchy and division, and now the question is, where does that leave us?
Right. What's the way out of this predicament?
Well, the speaker paints a pretty stark picture of our existence, comparing it to a video game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they suggest that death, in this context, is merely a transition, a momentary blip before we re-enter the game, potentially in a different form.
So it's like we're stuck in this endless loop of death and rebirth, always playing the same game.
That's the idea. And it ties into the concept of reincarnation, the idea that we cycle through lifetimes, perpetually caught in this illusion.
So we're not just playing the game once, we're playing it over and over again.
That's what the speaker seems to be suggesting.
That's both fascinating and a little terrifying.
I know, right? It really makes you think about the purpose of life, you know? If we're just going to keep coming back to this same game, what's the point?
And how do we break free from that cycle?
That's a big question, and that's where the speaker's warning about the monkey mind comes in.
Monkey mind? What's that?
Well, they describe it as this restless, chattering part of ourselves that clings to the illusion, fueling this cycle of rebirth.
So it's like this inner voice that keeps us trapped in the game.
It's driven by fear, by the desire to protect what we believe is ours, our possessions, our identity, our loved ones.
So it's that attachment to things, to the illusion of ownership that keeps us tethered to the game.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they even compare this possessiveness to a 70-year-old clinging to their adult child.
Ooh, that's a powerful image.
It highlights how this attachment to external things can actually be a form of imprisonment.
We become so focused on holding on to things, on controlling and defining, that we forget to actually live.
And that's what the speaker sees as the trap, this need to control and define,
Keeps us stuck in the illusion.
preventing us from experiencing the true depth and freedom of our being.
That's a profound insight.
And the speaker doesn't shy away from criticizing those who exploit this possessiveness, those who prey on others' fears and insecurities.
So they're talking about people who manipulate and control others for their own gain.
Right, and they see these individuals as representing the darker forces within the projected reality, those who perpetuate the illusion for their own benefit.
They thrive on the fear and division that keeps us trapped in the game.
Exactly.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There's got to be a way out of this.
Well, the speaker does offer a glimmer of hope. They talk about reclaiming our sovereignty.
Sovereignty. What do they mean by that?
It's about taking back control of our minds, recognizing our true nature, and breaking free from the puppet strings of this projected reality.
So it's about becoming aware of the illusion and choosing to step outside of it.
Right. It's about understanding that we're not just pawns in this game, that we have the power to change the rules.
That's empowering.
It is, and it brings us to this idea of inner standing, which is key to the speaker's message.
Okay, so we've got sovereignty and inner standing. How do those two concepts relate to each other?
Well, sovereignty is about reclaiming our power, and inner standing is about using that power to see through the illusion.
So it's not just about knowing something intellectually. It's about embodying that knowledge.
Exactly. It's about aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions with this newfound awareness, allowing it to guide our choices and shape our reality.
So we're not just observing the illusion from a distance. We're actually stepping into the driver's seat, taking control of the projector, and choosing what we project onto the screen of our experience.
That's a great way to put it. And the speaker seems to believe that once we achieve this level of inner standing, we can begin to shrug off the illusion, like we can finally break free from those limitations and constraints that have been holding us back.
It's like we're waking up from a dream.
But it's not easy, right? The
Yeah.
speaker acknowledges that this process takes effort, that we need to be vigilant, to set traps for our own minds.
Patterns for our own minds.
Yeah, it's like we need to become aware of those triggers that pull us back into the illusion, those habitual patterns of thought and behavior that keep us stuck.
So we need to be mindful of those triggers and develop strategies to disengage from them.
Exactly. And they emphasize the importance of saying no to the things that no longer serve us, whether it's toxic relationships, limiting beliefs, or unhealthy behaviors.
It's about decluttering our mental and emotional spaces, creating room for growth and transformation.
And they even talk about the moon as a symbol of control.
The moon.
Yeah, they argue that it exerts a powerful influence over our emotions and behavior, just like it affects the tides.
Interesting. So the moon represents the cyclical nature of the projected reality, the ebb and flow of our emotional states.
Right, and they warn against becoming slaves to these lunar cycles, encouraging us to become aware of these influences and to consciously choose how we respond to them.
So it's not about denying the existence of these external influences, but rather about recognizing them, understanding their impact, and ultimately making conscious choices rather than simply reacting unconsciously.
Precisely, it's about taking back our power, reclaiming our agency, and choosing to create a reality that aligns with our values and aspirations.
That's a powerful message.
The speaker seems to believe that we have the power to shape our own reality, that we're not simply puppets at the mercy of external forces or predetermined destinies.
But how do we actually go about doing that? How do we move from a state of feeling trapped to a state of conscious creation?
That's the big question, and the speaker does offer a few suggestions, emphasizing the importance of connecting with our passions, expressing our creativity, and stepping outside of our comfort zones.
So they're saying that by engaging in activities that light us up, that tap into our authentic selves, we begin to shift our energy and create a ripple effect in the world around us.
Right, it's like we're injecting a new frequency into the projected reality,
Yeah.
disrupting the old patterns and opening up new possibilities.
That's a beautiful image.
And it ties back to the earlier analogy of light, By shining our unique light, by expressing our true selves without reservation, we contribute to illuminating the world around us.
And potentially even amplifying the power of the original source.
This deep dive has already been quite the exploration. We've covered so much ground, from the illusion of reality to the importance of sovereignty and understanding.
And yet I feel like we've only just begun to unravel the depth of the speaker's ideas.
There's so much to unpack and ponder.
Absolutely.
I'm particularly struck by the speaker's call to break free from mental and emotional patterns that keep us enslaved to the illusion.
It really makes you question how much of our lives are spent reacting unconsciously to those ingrained patterns, those echoes of our primal past.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? We like to think of ourselves as rational, self-aware beings, but how much of our behavior is actually driven by these subconscious programs running in the background?
It's like we're on autopilot most of the time.
And if those programs are based on fear and separation, as the speaker suggests, it makes you wonder what we might be capable of if we could rewrite the code, so to speak.
That's where the speaker's call to understanding comes into play.
It's about becoming aware of those programs, understanding their origins, and then consciously choosing to operate from a different set of instructions.
So we can break free from those old patterns and create new ones that are more aligned with our true selves.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the things that really resonated with me. The speaker's emphasis on rediscovering our passions.
Ah, yes.
It's like they're saying that by reconnecting with what truly lights us up, we can tap into a source of energy that transcends the limitations of the projected reality.
It's about aligning ourselves with our authentic selves, with our unique purpose and potential.
And when we're operating from that place of passion and inspiration, we naturally break free from the constraints of the illusion.
Because we're no longer driven by fear and scarcity, we're driven by joy and abundance.
And the speaker encourages us to not just follow our passions, but to do something original, to express ourselves in unique and creative ways.
What do you think is the significance of that call to originality?
I think it's about breaking free from the mold, from the expectations and limitations that society often imposes upon us.
It's about tapping into our inherent creativity, our capacity to imagine and create something new, something that reflects our individual spark.
It's like each act of original creation is a small rebellion against the illusion, a way of injecting a bit of our authentic selves into the projected reality.
And those small rebellions can have a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same, to question the status quo and embrace their own uniqueness.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to know what stood out to you the most from this video.
That's a tough one. There were so many thought-provoking ideas.
I know, right? It's hard to choose just one.
But I think what I find particularly fascinating is the speaker's perspective on the interconnectedness of all things.
Ah, yes, that's a really important point.
They seem to suggest that this sense of separation, this division between self and other, is at the root of much of our suffering.
It goes back to that idea of the projected reality, the illusion of separateness that keeps us trapped in a cycle of fear and desire.
And the speaker offers a way out of that trap through understanding, through recognizing our inherent unity with all of creation.
It's a profound shift in perspective, one that has the potential to transform our relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us.
It's like we're all part of one big tapestry, each thread connected to the others.
And when we see ourselves as separate, we're essentially pulling on one thread and ignoring the rest of the tapestry.
Which creates tension and imbalance.
But when we recognize our interconnectedness, we can start to weave a more harmonious and beautiful tapestry together.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
It definitely gives us a lot to think about.
It does, and I think that's one of the things I appreciate most about this video.
It challenges us to question our assumptions, to expand our awareness, and to see the world in a new light.
It's a call to awaken to our true potential.
It is. And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding.
Absolutely. It's been a journey of discovery.
This deep dive has given us plenty of food for thought, and I encourage our listeners to check out the full YouTube video if they're interested in exploring these ideas further.
It's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're looking to expand your understanding of reality and consciousness.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible exploration. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it makes you wonder just how much control we actually have over our lives, you know?
Right, if we're just running these pre-programmed patterns.
Exactly.
But, the speaker doesn't just leave us hanging with this bleak outlook.
Oh, good.
They actually offer some really insightful ways to potentially break free.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Well, they keep coming back to this idea of sovereignty.
Sovereignty. I'm not sure I fully grasp what they mean by that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a loaded term, right?
Right.
But in this context, I think they're talking about taking back control of our minds, like really understanding our own inner workings.
So it's about becoming more self-aware.
Exactly. And then using that self-awareness to consciously choose how we respond to the world around us.
Okay, so it's not about denying the existence of these external influences like the moon or societal pressures.
Right.
It's more about recognizing them, understanding how they might be affecting us, and then making a conscious choice about how we want to respond.
Yeah, it's like taking responsibility for our own reactions rather than just reacting on autopilot,
Like we're not just puppets on a string.
Exactly. We have the power to choose our own strings, so to speak.
I like that analogy. So how do we go about reclaiming our sovereignty? What are some practical steps we can take?
Well, the speaker talks a lot about the importance of inner standing.
Inner standing. Is that like understanding, but like deeper?
Yeah. It's like understanding that goes beyond just the intellectual level. It's about really feeling it in your gut,
That's interesting. So it's not just about knowing something, it's about truly integrating that knowledge into our being.
Exactly. And the speaker seems to believe that once we reach that level of understanding, we can start to see through the illusion. We can recognize those patterns and programs that have been running our lives on autopilot.
And then we can choose to rewrite them, to create new patterns that are more aligned with our true selves.
Exactly. It's like we're taking back control of the projector, choosing what images we want to project onto the screen of our reality.
That's a powerful idea. But I imagine it's not always easy to do. There must be challenges along the way, right?
Oh, absolutely. The speaker talks about how we have to be really vigilant, like we're setting traps for our own minds.
Traps for our own minds. What do they mean by that?
Well, it's like we have to become aware of those triggers that pull us back into old patterns, those habitual ways of thinking and behaving that keep us stuck in the illusion.
So it's like we have to become really good at recognizing those triggers and then consciously choosing a different response.
Yeah, it's like we're training our minds to break free from those old automatic reactions.
That makes sense. It's like we're building new neural pathways, new habits of thought and behavior.
Exactly. And the speaker also emphasizes the importance of saying no.
No, to what?
To anything that doesn't serve us, to anything that keeps us trapped in the illusion.
So toxic relationships, limiting beliefs, unhealthy habits.
All of that. It's like we have to declutter our mental and emotional spaces, make room for something new to emerge.
That's a great way to put it. It's like we're creating a fertile ground for growth and transformation.
Now, the speaker also brings up an interesting point about the moon.
The moon. What does the moon have to do with all of this?
Well, they use it as a symbol of control.
Okay.
They argue that the moon exerts a powerful influence over our emotions and behavior, just like it affects the tides.
So it's like this unseen force that's pulling at us, influencing our moods and actions.
Right, and they're saying that we need to be aware of that influence, to not let it control us.
So it's not about denying the existence of these external influences. It's about understanding them and choosing how we respond to them.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our agency, our ability to make conscious choices rather than just reacting unconsciously.
That's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control.
Right. But the speaker is basically saying that we do have a choice. We always have a choice, even if it doesn't always feel like it.
That's empowering.
It is. And it leads to this idea that we have the power to shape our own reality, that we're not just victims of circumstance.
But how do we actually do that? How do we move from a state of feeling trapped to a state of conscious creation?
That's the million-dollar question. And the speaker does offer a few suggestions.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, they talk about the importance of connecting with our passions, expressing our creativity, and stepping outside of our comfort zones.
So they're saying that by engaging in activities that light us up, that tap into our authentic selves, we begin to shift our energy and create a ripple effect in the world around us.
Right. It's like we're injecting a new frequency into the projected reality, disrupting the old patterns and opening up new possibilities.
That's a beautiful image, and it ties back to the earlier analogy of light, By shining our unique light, by expressing our true selves without reservation, we contribute to illuminating the world around us.
Yeah, and it's like we're amplifying that original source of light, the one that got dimmed by the illusion.
That's a lot to take in. This deep dive is really making me think.
It's definitely a lot to process.
But it's so fascinating. I'm really curious to hear what the speaker has to say about how we can actually break free from those mental and emotional patterns that keep us enslaved to the illusion.
Well, stay tuned because that's exactly what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. So, we were just talking about how the speaker encourages us to connect with our passions, to do something original.
Right, like break out of those old patterns.
Exactly. And they really emphasize that it doesn't have to be anything grand or extraordinary,
Oh, okay.
Like it could be something as simple as cooking a new recipe or, taking a different route to work.
Just shaking things up a bit.
Yeah, anything that gets us out of our comfort zones and helps us see the world with fresh eyes.
That makes sense. Sometimes we get so stuck in our routines that we forget to appreciate the beauty and wonder that's all around us.
And I think the speaker is suggesting that by doing something original, by expressing our creativity, we're actually contributing to the evolution of consciousness itself.
Whoa, that's a big idea.
It is. It's like each act of creation is a little spark of light that helps illuminate the path for others.
I like that. Like we're all interconnected and our actions have a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves.
Now, as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm curious to know what really resonated with you from this video.
Well, there was so much to unpack.
I know, right?
But I think one of the things that really struck me was the speaker's perspective on good and evil.
Oh, yeah. That was interesting.
They present this analogy of evil as acid and good as alkaline.
Right. And they talk about how we often gravitate towards extremes, like seeking out intense experiences.
Whether it's through, like thrilling entertainment or passionate relationships.
Or even like those really intense spiritual experiences, the kind that can be almost overwhelming.
Right. And they're cautioning against becoming fixated on any one extreme, emphasizing the importance of balance and integration.
Finding that middle ground.
Exactly.
So it's not about denying or suppressing certain aspects of ourselves. It's about embracing the full spectrum of our experience, both the light and the dark.
It's about finding that harmony within ourselves, that balance between the acid and the alkaline.
And that's how we create a more harmonious world around us, by first finding that harmony within.
It's like that old saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so powerful. It's not just about understanding these concepts intellectually. It's about actually applying them to our lives.
It's about taking action, about making conscious choices that align with our values and aspirations.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about, and I want to encourage our listeners to check out the full YouTube video if they're interested in exploring these ideas further.
There's so much more to discover in the video itself.
And I think it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. It's a deep dive into the nature of reality and the potential of human consciousness.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible exploration. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.